Hey, welcome back to Swanson's Garage, everybody. Let's work on some gas tank straps today. Makes sense to do since we were working on gas tanks the other day. We're going to need some straps to hold them down. I just got the nuts taken off of this one, so we can take that apart. We can kind of straighten them back out. A lot of these are pretty mangled up. You can see, clean up the threads. And maybe try to straighten out a couple of these, see if we can salvage them. So these are the straps for by the firewall, the back ones. The straps for the front on the gas tank support go, and they also have these little brackets here to support the hood. One on either side. Of course, that one's broken. So we're going to have to remake one of them. This is the bracket that should be a nice circle here, but that supports the air intake pipe for the air washer. I only have one of them, so we'll have to get some material and make a second one of them. That should be pretty straightforward though. We'll have to obviously round up some correct hardware for a lot of these. They've mismatched and added spacer washers and whatnot. So the tractor here in the garage, I looked back at the pictures, was missing one band. The one in the yard had both bands, so that's why I only have 3 total here. Luckily, the Michigan tractor had both of them on, so with any luck, those might be good enough to use, although I vaguely remember the bolts and stuff possibly being bad on that tractor. Hopefully I'm remembering wrong. But we'll have to check that out, and hopefully we'll have at least one more good one to complete the set here. So I'll have to get a little bit of material to fabricate these as well. Add that to my list of things to order. Let's see what we can get done here. Well, those turned out pretty good considering. Got them all straightened out. Pretty close to the right shape. We'll fine tune them once we get the tractor all together and the new tank's made. You know, we can fine tune it to make sure it fits the tank appropriately, but they're all the same appropriate shape. Threads cleaned up nicely. I got those bent ones straightened out. This one, there's quite a few threads rusty bad, so we'll probably lop these off and weld a new chunk of threaded rod on there. For both sides, threads are rather poor on this one. This is the one we gotta take apart anyway. Take those rivets out. Make up some new little support brackets there. This one actually broke off in the process of straightening. So, but yeah, got all the hardware, new lock washers, threads cleaned up. Moving right along. Okay, today's reasons for why I don't get anything done around here. Is it just me, or do all restorations go like this? Is it everybody? So I got the old rivets ground and punched out of these threaded fasteners for the ends of the gas tank straps that we have to rebuild. These are the ones we're going to have to cut off and put new chunks of bolt on. No big deal there. Rounded up some rivets that I had, the right size. We'll have to cut them to length, but they're the right size. Okay, well I didn't have a rivet set for that size rivet, so I made one. Okay, and then I was rounding up some hardware for those are the bolts and nuts that hold the support bracket to the hood, and that one was still in there. Got that freed up. This one was still in the hood. Of course, it broke off in the process of getting it out. Okay. There again, rounding up the right hardware. I actually did have them on hand once I dug through my inventory. Okay, we're doing good so far. Lock washers, okay, we're doing good. Then we get to the nuts. 1/4 20 thread square nuts. Should be simple enough to get, right? Think again. These are old, obsolete ones. So a modern 1/4 20 square nut is 7/16. These are half. Normal person would just put them on there and move on with life, right? Well, we all know I'm not a normal person. It was bugging me. If they were half, I want them to be half again. Not that anybody else would know that, but me. But that's those things that bother me. So I had one good one here. This one is loose. We can use that one over. Well, this one had broken off where the bolt broke off into it. So I figured, I'll try to drill it out and retap it. Well, I did, but of course, as expected, the threads got pretty boogered up by the time I got it out of there. That's really no good. Okay, well, let me go see if I can hunt down any of the 1/2-inch square nuts. MasterCard doesn't have them. Did a bunch of searching online, wasn't having any luck. Of course, you could find the 7/16 ones everywhere. There's nothing special about that. Well, I ended up finding some heavy square nuts with the 1/2-inch, but they're a little bit thicker than these are, which, that's okay. I can live with that. If worst case scenario, I can always grind them down a little bit or whatever. It was like, oh, for crying out loud, spending way too much time trying to figure out stupid little thing like that. And of course, I got a whole jug of square nuts that I dug through. Of course, not a single one in that whole jug of the size I need. Of course not. Why would there be? So, finally got that straightened out, and can move on to the next thing until those nuts come and whatever. I got that material ordered. I think I told you that already. Rounded up some 16 gauge to make another one of these lower dash panels. Got that today. So we can get that cut out here at some point. There again, it's kind of a struggle, let's call it, because parts book calls for 16 gauge for this panel. And when you caliper it, it's thicker than what today's 16 gauge actually is. So when I brought this to the sheet metal shop to get another piece, they put their gauge on it, and they were saying, well, that might not be 16 gauge. That might be like 14 gauge, but 14 was loose on there. So it might be like a 15 gauge or something. Or the standards of gauges have changed over the years, maybe, whatever. Long story short, I ended up going with 16 gauge because for what it is, it's close enough. But it's just like, for crying out loud, every single thing today has just been kind of a fight, a struggle, just to find the right stuff. Maybe it's just me. I know it's just me. I overthink these things way too much, but whatever. That's what it is. Okay, so I got this air cleaner pipe support roughly straightened back out. We won't be able to finalize any of that though until all this stuff is back on the tractor and we get our piece of pipe made so we can put it on, because depending on how this is bent, that's going to want to put that pipe sideways, and of course we want it nice and straight when we're all done. So I guess we can't finish that project either until we get farther down the road. So today is kind of a good news, bad news kind of day. We'll start with what I started with, the good news. I made another attempt to get the pins out of the spinner knobs for the steering wheels. I put them in the press a little bit differently this time, and I got them to come out without much trouble, so that's good. We'll still have to make new pins because now that these have been ground off to remove from the steering wheel, there's nothing left to pin over. So we'll have to make the same thing but a little bit longer. That's no big deal. So that's the good news. The bad news is, after I sandblasted this one, there it is. There is a little bit of a hairline crack here. I don't think it's enough to probably worry about in this case because it's just a spinner knob. But it might be something maybe we'll practice brazing on or something. We don't got a lot to lose on that part. Good thing to experiment, learn a little bit. Cleaned up the big nuts that go in the front of the pulley for the engine, put your hand crank. Those cleaned up really nice. Couple of chisel marks where guys have removed it in the past. I dressed them up a little bit. Not too bad though. Cleaned up the 3 gas tank straps I have after I removed the ends of that one. I think I already showed you I straightened that out, sandblasted that. So good and bad news here. Okay, so this is the pulley for the 26. This is the pulley for the one in the yard, the 1925. Bad news is this one's all kinds of broken. It's got at least, 1, 2, 3 chunks out of it. We have a couple of the chunks. There again, this might be a good excuse to try a little brazing and see how we can do to repair it. Because it would be nice to use the right lipped pulley on that tractor, seeing as that's what it came with. The Michigan tractor has a smooth pulley like this that I believe is good. We could use on the 25. And one of the parts blocks has a lipped pulley, but that has at least 1 chunk out of it as well, so it would be another have to be fixed situation. A guy could probably put this in the lathe, turn down the broken lips and turn it into a smooth pulley. Functional, it would be the same. I don't think it would make any difference one way or the other, because they must have simplified it over the years. I suppose it was easier to cast and or machine this one with no lip. But it would be nice there again for originality to keep the lipped one on the 25, so it would be original. Something to think about. Got this one cleaned up for the 26 here. That's the good news. The bad news is, once I cleaned it up, I discovered that it's got a crack in it. So that stinks, right on the keyway. I suppose that was the weak point. So, that's no good the way it is. We'll have to either fix that and or use the one from the Michigan parts tractor as a replacement if that one turns out to be good. So we have a few things to think about and potentially fix. So that's where we're at now. Probably move on to the next thing. So I've just been letting these butterflies soak. Every time I come out to the garage, I've just been spraying down that butterfly in the shaft and the bushings and just letting it soak, being patient. So today I figured, I'll give it another shot, see if I can get it loose. The first step was just getting the butterfly to wiggle on the shaft. And then once I got that, got the rest of it apart. So I'll show you what I did. Working on the second one here now. I just got some bolts clamped in the vise, so I got a good sturdy place to work on them. And then I just carefully with pry bars and, very gently just started prying things back and forth to try to get it. And once it wiggled, you just keep spraying it, wiggling it back and forth and wiggling it back and forth. And eventually you get it where you can wiggle it on the shaft. Okay, well, that's how far I've gotten it now. Now I'll just keep, same thing, wiggle, 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 and then slowly start prying out this way on the shaft and wiggling it back and forth and soaking it, and eventually it'll all come apart. There, the second one came apart really good too. Happy about that. See, a lot of times patience is key with these projects. Just let it soak, and it got in there and did its thing. As expected, the shafts are worn. This one had a couple of extra homemade washers here. So it should be washer on that side, butterfly, washer on that side, and then it looks like a little felt packing in here to seal up the shaft. That side is plugged, so we don't have to worry about air leaking on that side. And then the wire that goes through holds it all in place. So we'll get everything cleaned up, and then for sure we'll have to do new shafts, and we'll have to decide if the bushings are needed there as well, or do some measuring and see what's all worn. But I'm just happy that the butterflies didn't get ruined in the process of taking it all apart. Moving on to the next thing. Well, let's try see what we can do with the water pump. Maybe get that disassembled today if things go good. We got some time this afternoon. There's just a little before shot. I haven't cracked this open yet at all. It's still oily where the inside of the engine, so that's a good sign. An observation here. There's a chunk of a little wire wrapped around here. Not sure what the purpose of that is yet. Okay, set up with the bearing splitter and puller here. Pulling this magneto flange coupling off the end of the water pump. It was putting up a little bit of a fight, but it's coming pretty good now. That could have been part of the reason why it was so hard to come off. Things were wore out. Somebody's been here before. Wore out key, wore out slot. And they had little pieces of shim wedged on either side of it to take up things. So things are probably kind of wedged on there. Plus you add a few decades of rust. While trying to get that off, I actually did move the shaft a little bit, so it's not 100% stuck in the rest of the pump anymore. Okay, I got all the bolts out, nuts off, got the packing nuts loose. Gets you every time. Remember, water pumps, when you got nuts like that on the shaft, it isn't always righty tighty lefty loosey. Sometimes it's righty loosey. Gets you. That gets you. You gotta remember that. I'm gonna take off this gear next, and then in theory, everything should come apart. I have to be careful. I don't want to break any castings, so we'll just keep soaking and lightly tapping and wiggling, and hopefully it all comes apart. Did I mention I got the shaft turned in too? Okay, so I got this casting off the shaft first. I had to get all the lead packing out of there, and then it came off. There was actually a lot of packing still in there. Different kinds too. We got rope packing, we got like braided square packing, and we also got like layers of, I haven't seen this before, it looks like little thin layers of like lead. Anybody seen that before? Was that some type of a rope originally, or I'm not sure what that was. It's kind of, like I said, it looks like just like layers and layers of thin sheets of lead. Kind of neat. There's actually a lot of it in there. It probably would have held water. Really good shape. The shaft is wore out, of course, as expected. Here's your brass impeller. Not sure how that comes off. It looks like there's one pin going that way, but there's no hole on the other side to drive it back out. So that's going to be interesting. So once I had that off, I had a flat place to work off of. And I tend to forget that I have a press that I can utilize now. But I remembered, so I set it up in there, and then I pressed down on the end of the shaft, gently, very gently. If it wasn't going to come really easily, I was going to quit because I didn't want to take the chance of breaking any of these castings. But I pressed down, and then got that gear to move and come off then, so that's good. So now I think we should be able to separate the rest of this stuff. There, got the water pump all apart. Everything considering it's in pretty good shape. No major issues. Of course, we got worn shafts where the packing runs, but that's expected on water pumps. It's kind of a wear part. So the last packing I got apart, I got that apart kind of intact. And like I said, all those ones with those layers, it's almost like it's a formed seal. It's got like that rope, square braided rope inside of impregnated layers of lead or whatever. Kind of neat. A little different than kind of packings I've seen before. I don't know if this was like more of a factory thing, or maybe there's stuff I don't know about. Leave a comment below if you know what that is, if you've seen that before. I'm more familiar with like these, you see the string packings, with lead around it, kind of like that, or like this where it's just a kind of a rope. But this has got more like a layers of lead around it. Kind of neat. Lots more parts to clean up now. Well, there, a couple more hours in the sandblaster booth, and we got a whole pile of clean projects ready to rebuild. Got the butterflies all cleaned up. Happy with all that. So some new bushings and a new chunk of shaft, and we should be good to go there. It's pretty straightforward rebuild. Water pump, all the important parts are cleaned up here. Still need to get the impeller off the shaft. But that's kind of odd. There's only a hole for the pin from the one side. There's no access from the other side. It's kind of strange, so I can't drive that pin back out. So that's going to be a fun one. We'll probably just sacrifice the shaft and drill it out, but it's kind of weird that they didn't go all the way through. Gear and a nut to clean up yet, but that's no big deal. All these castings are sandblasted and clean though, so a little bit of final cleanup and checking and we'll be good to go. All the hardware is cleaned up, the threads have all been chased, new lock washers, you guys know the routine by now. All the packing gland nuts are in really good shape there. Oftentimes these are all boogered up from people using the wrong wrenches, and definitely we will have to get the right water pump wrench, kind of a slim little profile one to get in there and tighten them, because you can't get in there with a normal big wrench. I learned that taking it apart. I may do, but when we go to put together when it's all done for final, we'll have to do a little bit better job. Same thing, we'll wait until we get the new shaft to decide if these bushings are good enough or if they need to be replaced, remade. Pretty cool. I think I'll probably wrap this video up again. We're just getting so much done. We're just pumping out videos left and right here lately. I thank you all for watching. I try to put out videos about once a week if I can. So check back often. I appreciate all your watch hours. See you guys soon.